The evil Haman was defeated. His plan to annihilate every Jew in the Persian Empire was thwarted by Esther's dinner party resistance. To make up for his part in Haman's plot, the king offers to do whatever Mordecai wishes. So Mordecai wrote his wishes into a new law for the empire. Mordecai went out from the king's presence in a blue and white royal robe, wearing a gold crown of white and red-purple coat. The city of Susa greeted him with shouts of joy. For the Jews, it was a day of light, happiness, joy, and honor. In every province and in every town, wherever the king's order and his law arrived, for the Jews, it was a day of happiness and joy. For them, it meant feasts and a holiday. Many people in the land became Jews themselves out of fear of the Jews.
Now, if the story only would have stopped with Haman's defeat, if Mordecai would have just used his golden ticket that the king had given him, any wish that he wanted, if he would have used that with compassion, he didn't. And the order went like this.
It was on this 13th day of the 12th month, that is, the month of Adar, that the king's order and his law were to be enforced. On the very day that the enemies of the Jews hoped to overpower them, the tables were turned against them. The Jews overpowered their enemies instead. The Jews joined together in their towns and all the provinces to defend themselves against those who tried to harm them. No one was able to stand in their way because everyone was afraid of the Jews. All the leaders of the provinces, rulers, governors, and those being in charge of the king's business helped the Jews because they were afraid of Mordecai. Because Mordecai was very important in this palace, news about him was sweeping through the provinces. Indeed, Mordecai was becoming more and more important every day. The Jews put down all their enemies with sword blows, killing, and destruction. They did whatever they wanted with those who hated them. In the fortified part of Susa, the Jews killed 500 people, but the Jews didn't lay a hand on anything their enemies owned. That same day, the report concerning the number killed in the fortified part of Susa reached the king. So the king said to Queen Esther in the fortified part of Susa, "The Jews have killed 500 people as well as 10 sons of Haman. What have they done in the rest of your royal provinces? What do you wish now? I'll give it to you. What is your desire? I'll do it this too." Esther answered, "If the king wishes, let the Jews who are in Susa have tomorrow to do whatever the law allows for today, and let them also impale the 10 sons of Haman on pointed poles." The king ordered that this be done, and the law became public in Susa. They impaled the 10 sons of Haman just as she said. The Jews in Susa joined together again, this time on the 14th day of the month of Adar. In Susa, they killed 300 people, but they didn't lay a hand on anything the people owned. The Jews out in the royal provinces all joined together to defend their lives. They put to rest the troubles with their enemies and killed those who hated them. The total was 75,000 dead, but the Jews didn't lay a hand on anything their enemies owned.
They called it defense. They didn't pillage their victims, so I guess that kind of made it all okay. They carried out their brutal revenge and they created a holiday to celebrate it. And I'm telling you, if you get a chance to go to a Purim party, they are really fun, no doubt. But it has a dark side to it. This last chapter, in the Purim parties I've been to, we skip this chapter. The revenge story does not sit well with everyone. The Jewish writer of the Proverbs once wrote, "Don't say,
I'll do to them what they did to me. I'll pay them back for their actions.
Let revenge belong to God alone. The Apostle Paul, who was a Jewish Christian, later echoed what the writer of Proverbs said when he wrote, "Don't try to get revenge for yourselves, dear friends. Instead, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him a drink. Don't be defeated by evil, but defeat evil with good." The desire for revenge, though, it's very real. In Shakespeare's play, The Merchant of Venice, that's the quote I put on the front of the bulletin today. Revenge is seen in that quote as natural to a human being as anything else. Revenge, or maybe it's the fear of revenge, I don't know. It's perhaps a way that we are wired in order to help keep order. You're less likely to offend someone if you think that they're going to come after you. My first landlord was a guy, he worked nights. He worked over at the university hospital. And the neighbors would throw these huge parties and they would block his car in so that he couldn't leave for work. And he'd go over and he'd ask him, can somebody come out and move their cars? They'd say, "Oh, we don't know whose cars those are." So his wife, Loy, don't mess with Loy. Loy went out with a hammer and nails and drove them into every tire on the car. I don't think they ever blocked his car again. So what do you think? Fair? The fear of revenge, of retaliation, can be a deterrent. Sometimes people take revenge just because they think it's going to make them feel better. A little righteous payback after you've been hurt. Somebody cheats on you. You destroy their phone or you key their car. And there are those that believe that revenge can teach people lessons. If the retaliation shows someone the error of their ways, then they can move on and grow from it. Yes, that doesn't really happen though, does it? There was a researcher, he's a psychologist named Eric Jaffe, and he has extensively studied the complicated psychology of revenge. And when an avenger thinks that they've paid a person back, they've paid the person back in kind, that the person's gotten their just desserts, the offender almost never agrees. Huge shock in that research. They are always convinced that the retaliation was too harsh. And then to get things on balance, they need to seek to retaliate back to even the score. And you see how that goes. It's that endless cycle of revenge. When you've been wronged, when you've been hurt, your very being calls out for justice. Your trust, your sense of faith in another person, or your sense of what's fair in the world, when that gets violated, there is something inside of you that calls out for that sense of balance, of order to be restored, to make the world make sense again. The desire for revenge is a basic human response. The path of spiritual maturity, the path of Christian discipleship, it leads beyond that basic response, though. Spiritual growth works inside a person to move you to a new place beyond revenge. And it's not just Christianity. Confucius once said, before you embark on a journey of revenge, dig 2 graves. Jesus taught his followers to always forgive people who wrong us. And Gandhi seemed to agree with him when he said, an eye for an eye ends up making the whole world blind. We can grow beyond our need for revenge. And it starts by slowing down. And I don't care who you are, how evolved you think your thinking has become. Everyone has thoughts of revenge. Admitting and speaking your truth about that, and realizing those thoughts, that reaction is a response to a sense of your sense of trust of what's fair being damaged. That this world does not always work the way you want it to. And it's not right, it's not fair. But revenge will never help repair that. And when you're thinking that revenge can actually thinking about revenge actually can make you feel a little bit better, the actual act doesn't. You will always live in fear of whatever retaliation may come. Do you think that the Jews in the Persian Empire, they just went back to business as usual after slaughtering 75,000 of their neighbors? Do you think that the children of the slaughtered agreed that this was an appropriate act of self-defense? It is vital for you as a human being and all of us as a collective humanity to go beyond this basic human response. And even if you find that by slowing down, it just causes your brain to get a little more calculating in its conviction that revenge is a dish best served cold. Realize that the revenge is now in control of you. You are no longer in control. You need to get past that. Because there are ways to stand up for yourself beyond revenge, ways that actually work, that make you stronger and lead beyond those feelings of fear and anger. Because for too long, revenge has been put out there as the only road to justice. I've talked with fathers who are like, look, I have to teach my kid to fight back because otherwise people are just going to take advantage of him. I've heard parents say that to me. And you know what? It's a lie. Whoever sold that to you was lying to you. For too long, revenge has been put out there as the only road to justice. And we've lived with that lie that for so long that the only way to stand up for yourself is to make your enemy afraid of your retaliation, of your revenge. And in an age of rampant gun violence, to weapons of mass destruction, we must develop ways beyond revenge. Because all it takes is for one person to do the unthinkable, to push the button, to pull the trigger, sign the order, and so many can die. It has happened before, but it does not need to continue. The good news is that there is a better way. We can grow spiritually beyond the basic human response of revenge. And I'm going to tell you this, you can't learn it from a sermon. It takes practice. It is a spiritual practice that is rooted in ancient teachings that truthfully don't get a lot of play today. It's time to revive them. This week, I'm going to put some resources out on the church's Facebook page in case you'd like to go deeper on alternatives to revenge. Because there are ways that you can stand up for yourself without going down that path. There is so much hope that the cycle of revenge and fear can be broken. Esther and Mordecai's path does not need to be ours. Will you pray with me? Lord, a great lie has spread A lie that our only way to live in peace is to have our enemies live in fear. This lie kills. There are ways of standing up for yourself beyond revenge and the fear of retaliation. Show us again your way of compassion.